Hello, everyone. I am Tyler, of course, with Andrew. We are back after a little hiatus of the off season, deep into the off season, but we're here with Sideline Signal. We are going to be doing some preseason hot takes. Now, we want to preface this by saying they may not all be chilly hot, like super hot. Some of them are lukewarm, but we're excited to talk finally about the 2025 season as we inch closer. Teams are gearing up. Andrew, how you feeling? How you feeling to be back? And are you excited for the season?
Oh, I'm so excited for college football to be back. This is going to be a very interesting season in my eyes. A lot of different teams that play some easy schedules, some tough schedules. There's going to be a lot of, I'll say, uniqueness, I think. I think this is one of the harder years for me to kind of go into and come up with some good predictions, at least this early into the season. But I'm super excited. I'm fired up. Just ready for football to be back.
Yeah, and of course it is July. We're not even close to the start of the season yet, about a month out. But speculation is the most fun thing to do in sports media. So without further ado, let's get into it. Andrew, what is your first hot take?
Yeah, okay. So my first hot take for the season is going to be coming out of the ACC, and it's that I think that right now, and especially as the season progresses, that Cade Klubnik will and should be the Heisman favorite, and then subsequently the Heisman winner. And I say this because I look at it. This is a guy who at Clemson last year threw for 3,639 passing yards, 36 touchdowns to just six interceptions, and won the ACC and led the team to a playoff appearance, and arguably kind of an okay Clemson team compared to past teams. And I look at that and I see the returning players. They got eight players returning on both sides of the ball. So Klubnik and seven other offensive returners, including Bryant Wesco, which was his number one option at receiver last year, and almost their entire O line. I think it's their left guard graduated. So an entire offensive line essentially coming back, his key offensive weapon coming back, and then obviously Cade Klubnik taking the step up in another year of maturity. I think that Clemson has potentially a star factor team this year. I'm really excited to watch them play. I looked at their schedule. The ACC, other than maybe like you and I talked about Georgia Tech, that could be a concerning game at Georgia Tech week 3, but their ACC schedule is relatively light. They don't play Miami, which is right now arguably the second best team, if not one of the best teams in the ACC. So they got a pretty easy conference schedule that I could see them winning out. And they have two out of conference games that are essentially your prove you deserve the Heisman Trophy games against two potential Heisman runners this year in Garrett Nussmeier and LSU when they play week 1, and then Lenora Sellers in South Carolina when they play in the final week of the regular season. And those looking at those two games, I think that Clemson can win one of those two, if not both. And pairing that with potentially an undefeated conference schedule and another ACC title, if they make the playoffs and Klubnik has a solid year with that record, I think he's the runaway for the Heisman.
Yeah, and it's certainly possible. I mean, I have him up there as well. A guy like Antonio Williams on the outside for him as well. And he'll get to prove it week one and then the final week of the year, as you said, kind of close the book on it, have his Heisman moment. And in a weaker ACC, especially with the schedule, as you said, that's really favorable for him. So it'll be interesting to see. But Cade Klubnik, he's got to be talked about. I feel like he kind of gets a lot of flack for some of his past play, but he's been impressive. Last year, he was impressive on an underrated and really not really talked about Clemson team. But they'll be coming in strong, playing against my Tigers week 1. I'll be super nervous for that game. So there you go with that one. So my first take is also Heisman related, but it's a bit on the negative side. I say that Arch Manning will not be a Heisman finalist, not the
Wow.
winner, but also not a finalist. He definitely has the hype, but can he produce? He showed flashes of elite talent during the 2024 campaign, but it was against lesser competition. LU Monroe, he threw two picks in that game, Mississippi State and UTSA. So nothing great. That he hasn't played Georgia, he hasn't played in Alabama, he hasn't played Florida, or any of those games on the road either. So we're gonna find out pretty fast what kind of player he is as a full-time starter. Obviously, their week 1 matchup in Columbus, while it won't be a night game, which I know Buckeyes fans are pretty upset about, it's going to be a huge game right away. We're gonna find out what both Texas and Ohio State are made of. And then we also have so much competition for the Heisman this year. As Andrew stated, Cade Klubnik, Nussmeier from LSU, Lenore Sellers, as well as Jeremiah Smith, who is widely regarded as the best player in the sport. And if you wanted to go for defense, Caleb Downs could be a player like a dark horse, Charles Woodson type player, and maybe not both sides, but be so good defensively that he's in the running for it. So it'll be interesting. I not buying the hype until he proves it. So that's really my take there. He won't be a Heisman finalist.
Yeah, that I will say right now that is a very bold take, but I tend to agree that we have to wait and see because with a lot of these Heisman front runners this early in the offseason, they're all proven guys. Even like a Drew Aller, who's had a little bit of talks. They've all had the seasons of starting and they you know what you can expect out of them, and then it just depends on if they can perform or not. But Arch, he's already getting thrown in mainly because of his last name. I will say his appearances for the most part last season, he did play well, albeit not a lot. But in his games in the non-conference weaker opponents, he looked pretty sharp. And this is a player that Texas is heavily relying on this season. But yeah, it's to me, I don't think that we should expect him to win the Heisman right now because we don't know much about what he's going to be as a starting quarterback when you get into those tough games. Obviously, he played a couple snaps against Georgia during the regular season, and he was getting melted. Obviously, so was Quinn Ewers. That O line really struggled against Georgia's D line. But the point is he hasn't proven it yet. So I like the take out of you. I think it's very interesting. And that game against Columbus, against Ohio State and Columbus, is going to be a fun one to watch. But I think it's great because your take talking about the importance of Ohio State versus Texas perfectly kind of segues into my second hot take today, and that it needs a little bit of explaining, but I think that we'll see some regression out of Ohio State this year. And obviously, it kind of makes sense. Yeah, they're the returning national champion. Maybe they won't win it again. That's kind of where I'm at. But to me, I look at it and I don't think it's going to be as fun of a team for Ohio State to watch this year. And that's kind of why I say the regression. Obviously, you still have arguably the best skill position player in the country in Jeremiah Smith. But the way I see it, you lose your starting quarterback that was proven in Will Howard. You lose both of your star running backs to the draft. So your run game is going to drastically look different. And you lose pretty much your entire defense. The only two notable players returning are Caleb Downs, like you mentioned, he's going to be a Bednarik winner in my opinion. Phenomenal, phenomenal player Caleb Downs is, and then Igbinosun, who was prone to having a lot of penalties last season. So there's going to be a lot of new faces in that Ohio State team, paired also with an entirely new offensive coordinator. He was the coordinator before Chip Kelly came in, Brian Hartline, but he struggled and he wasn't the play caller when he was OC. It was Ryan Day. So he's going to have a big step up. And is he going to be able to produce? Obviously, like I said, Julian Sayin right now looks like the starter for Ohio State through the spring, but new quarterback. You lose a guy like Amika Ibuka too in the receiving room. Obviously, you still have Jeremiah Smith, but you have to expect that he's going to be doubled almost every play this season.
Yeah.
So the way I see it is that there's a lot of new faces. There's going to be growing pains, but Ohio State still could be pretty good, which is the hard part. Is you look, they have a pretty easy schedule when you look at what the Big Ten could be. There are notable matchups that I kind of highlighted. Texas week 1, which is going to be a test for both teams. They got Penn State week 10, another tough matchup. And then obviously the game against Michigan. We don't know what Michigan's going to look like this year, but even at Michigan's low last year, they were able to knock off Ohio State. So that's three tough games that they could potentially kind of stumble in, especially week 1 when you have in pretty much an entirely new team. I'm a little concerned for Ohio State, but they'll still be a bubble team for me. But are they going to be able to hit that peak of being a back-to-back national champion? No, I don't think that we will see that. I think that they could potentially be, if they make the playoffs, a first or second round exit. So like I said, I think they'll still be a pretty competitive team, but it's going to take some time for them to get gelled, and I don't think you can necessarily just rely on Jeremiah Smith. So expect some growing pains. I know a lot of people still have him as a national champion favorite, but I'm a little colder on Ohio State than a lot of people are.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. And one thing, obviously, with saying at quarterback now, they had Will Howard, who was super experienced, even though it wasn't at Ohio State. He had a full career at Kansas State. So he had played in all types of atmospheres in big games. Throwing him out there, his first game is at home, yes, but against Texas, a team that is widely known for its athleticism on defense. It's going to be tough for him to adjust. And Jeremiah Smith is only effective if you get him the ball. Teams would be stupid not to double cover him every single play. I would sacrifice kind of the run as well. And something else that is very, pertinent for Ohio State is that their O line is changing over. Three of those guys were drafted in the NFL. So they have a lot to replace. Plus, obviously, as you said, Brian Hartline with the signal calling. So it's going to be different. It's not going to be the Ohio State, kind of power team that we saw last year. They did struggle. Yes, they lost to Michigan. It didn't look great sometimes, but once they got in the playoffs, they hit that second gear. And like you said, like I don't know if they have that second gear right now. Obviously, we could be proven wrong. It's super early, but just looking at them on paper and looking at what we've seen from the guys that are going to be playing, it doesn't look like nearly the same team. And obviously, the hopes may be a little too high for back-to-back national championships. That's hard to do in general for any team. So, it's going to be different for Ohio State this year. Okay, so moving into my second take, I'm headed down to the Southeast Conference, the SEC. There will be two new teams, not just one, two in the championship game come December. So that means no Texas and no Georgia. And all you Texas fans out there, I'm not necessarily trashing you guys. I know my first two takes were about Texas, but the SEC is a gauntlet. Like just in general, as of right now, it's so stacked that I really have no idea who's going to win the conference. I can't put my finger on it. And, one of the teams is one of the ones that I love and have rooted for most of my life in LSU. I don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of questions for both teams. They lost a lot of talent to the NFL draft. Two quarterbacks that have not played a lot in Arch Manning and Gunnar Stockton, and neither one was blow your socks off good in the appearances they made. Now, obviously, it's unfair to say that with such a small sample size, so we'll wait and see. But that may be enough for me to put a team like LSU or Tennessee or Florida or South Carolina or maybe even a scrappy Vandy team, or am I forgetting of a team? Oh yeah, Alabama as well in that conference. So it's going to be really hard to get back there, and I would not be surprised at all if neither one of them was even in the top three of the conference. That there's a chance that that happens. So it's going to be just a really hard thing to do. So for that reason, I don't think Texas and Georgia make it back to the SEC title game. We'll have two new teams. I'm not going to give my prediction on that yet, but just neither one of those teams will make it.
I love that take. I don't know yet if I agree with it, but I think it's a fun take because I love to see chaos in conferences. You know that I was loving the Big 12 last year
Yeah.
because it was nothing but chaos. And I could see it this year because there's a lot. This feels like a big year of change for a lot of the top programs amongst all conferences, the ACC, the SEC, Big 10, Big 12. So many of the top teams are having an entirely new team. And to me, that's how I see it with Georgia. There's pretty much nobody left from their
Yeah.
team last year, especially on the defensive side, which they're known for. And then Texas, again, they lost a lot of their top guys. They have some good guys coming back and some good freshmen, some good portal pickups, but we don't know. And that's the thing is it's do we just follow in blind faith and assume that Kirby Smart's going to build another super team, or do we kind of push back and question and be like, all right, we saw a little bit of chaos with some teams last year. There were some closer games and maybe some losses that shouldn't have happened, but we're looking at it now and it's like other than maybe Texas because they get all of the media hype right now, do we have a clear favorite in the SEC? I don't know. I don't think so because LSU, they're kind of in that in between. Like you said, Georgia and Texas are coming off the highs of being just the powerhouses, but new team. South Carolina's got something to prove. Alabama, like LSU, are kind of in that in between. We don't know with A&M. They could be high, they could be low.
I forgot about them
Going
too.
to be
That's
hard.
even crazy.
Tennessee, completely new offense essentially. So there's no clear favorite in my eyes. And with most of them playing each other, Ole Miss is another team too that's completely changed. So who knows? We're kind of at this point with the SEC. I mean, we can assume a team, maybe Auburn, 100% Mississippi State, they're not going to be in contention. Even in Arkansas could be sneaky
Yeah,
this year with Taylon Green coming back. We don't know. So yeah, I love that. I think that there could easily be a lot of chaos and a lot of these teams split against each other. So I love that take, and I would love to be rolling into championship weekend and seeing like Vanderbilt, Florida as the SEC championship, being like,
crazy.
what the what's going on? I love that take. I'm here for it. We'll have to wait and see if it plays out. But kind of sticking along the lines of the SEC, for my third take, I have that I believe UCLA will be the winner of the whole Nico Iamaleava kind of fiasco that played out this offseason. Obviously, for the fans, if you know or you don't know, Iamaleava held out for the spring game, wanting a better NIL package, and it led to a long standout that Tennessee essentially just cut him, told him to hit the portal. They didn't want him. And a lot of teams kind of passed on him. He ended up going to UCLA, and the big question is who's going to win that kind of the situation. I have it as UCLA, and the reason I have UCLA winning this deal is essentially the expectations amongst the two teams. You're looking at a UCLA team that won 3 games last year, and they were abysmal. Honestly, they probably won more games than many teams thought, or many people thought they would win. And so when I look at it, a team that struggled immensely, did not have a good team, not a great roster, new to a very difficult conference, your expectations, obviously you want to go out every season and win. But to me, UCLA's expectation is to try to get around 500, a little bit better than 500. And I think with a quarterback like Nico, they could easily do that. They're not going out to win the Big Ten this year. They don't have the firepower, but if they can, in their first year with Iamaleava, which they'll have him for a few, obviously, because he was a freshman last year, so he's not going to be draft eligible. So if they can kind of pave the way to rebuild this program and get some more wins this season with Nico, I think that's a bigger win for Tennessee because Tennessee's expectations right now is to get back to the college football playoffs. And you look, yes, this is a kind of a new SEC like we're talking about. We don't really have that necessarily that face of the conference right now that's set. Could be Tennessee, but they have some very difficult opponents. When you look at the regular season, they got to play Georgia, they got to play Alabama, they got to play Florida, and then Oklahoma, all in the regular season. And then whoever makes it to the SEC championship, if they're in there too, that's another tough matchup. So that's 4 regular season and then a fifth with the championship if they make it. Very, very difficult games. And they could easily lose 3 of the 5, if not more. And so if you look at it and Tennessee doesn't make the playoffs this year with pretty much, like I said, an entirely new offense, I'm sure people will be sitting here and wondering, should we have just paid Nico the money that he wanted? Would it have been more beneficial for us to have a quarterback that's comfortable with our play style, with our culture, with the atmosphere? Would that have worked out better for us that knows the SEC? That might be the case. I don't know if Tennessee will be a playoff team this year. And if they aren't, I'm sure Josh Heupel might be rethinking his decision.
Yeah, and there's a definitely a chance. And I think I agree with you in what you said. Like their expectations are different. Like this is huge for UCLA if they're able to get to a bowl game. Like that's a huge deal for UCLA, taking a step in the right direction where I agree with you. I think Tennessee regresses, but I don't want you to sleep on Joey Aguilar, man. App State for 4 years or 3 years, whatever it was, he was solid, dude. Now, the SEC is a different beast, and you're playing in the Sun Belt, so it's a bit different. And he kind of, App State kind of ran that conference for his career. But don't sleep on him. I'm telling you.
Yeah,
Um,
when I'm looking at it, I just don't know if he's going to be enough for them to make the playoffs. I think he'll be solid, but is he going to be an average SEC quarterback or is he going to truly take that step up? If he doesn't, you already knew what you had with Nico. Nico, as a freshman, was a pretty solid SEC quarterback. So if Aguilar doesn't show it like he did at App State, they could easily be singing the blues this year.
Yeah, and there's definitely a chance of that. And I think for Tennessee fans, the best thing that you can hope for is a similar season to I know they're your rivals here, but Vandy's Diego Pavia, where he came from New Mexico State, went to the SEC and succeeded. So that's kind of the best bet for them, but definitely a regression. I don't think there's a doubt in my mind that they're going to do worse than they did. So yeah, I agree with you. I think Nico. Going to UCLA, while I think it's a laughable decision on his part, it could end up benefiting UCLA and costing Tennessee a lot more than we previously thought here. All right, so my third take, Andrew had one national championship team. Now I'm going to take the other down a peg here. I think Notre Dame loses three or more games. And I don't want to say this. My grandfather was a Notre Dame fan. My dad roots for them. But I don't see it. I don't see it. Now, Jeremiah Love, beast, best running back in the country, no doubt in my mind. They're returning some wide receivers, tight end. Their O line isn't changing too much. They lost a lot on defense, but they'll be able to fill in. I'm also confident in Marcus Freeman as a coach. But CJ Carr, true freshman at quarterback, that's going to be really interesting. And then right out of the gate, they don't have any time to figure things out. They go to Miami the first week, then they host Texas A&M, who's going to be very good, as well as games like hosting Boise State. Although they don't have Genty, they're going to be solid. They're going to be one of those group of five contenders. At Arkansas in Fayetteville, it's going to be loud. Arkansas may not be the best, but they're certainly one of those above average, I want to say, or average. I'll put them in that category. Versus USC, that's going to be a tough game. At Pitt, there are some chances to slip up. I think the margins are going to be razor thin. I think they're going to be in a lot of close games, and I could see them dropping to 9-3 or possibly even 8-4 and being completely out of the conversation. Now, because they're an independent, they're kind of not hurt in a way, but hurt in terms of they have to build their own resume. They have to go out there and get those games that are going to get them into the playoff. They can't just play cupcakes the whole way through. So it's going to be really interesting to see where they end up. But CJ Carr, got to see more from him, obviously. Super young. Riley Leonard was serviceable and he came up in the big moments. He's got to have that it factor as well in Carr. And Jeremiah Love, while he can do so much, he cannot carry the offense for the entire year. He has gotten injured before. And I could see him getting injured again. Obviously, I don't wish it on him at all. I hope he's healthy 1,000% of the way through. But there's a chance of that. Plus his hard schedule, I see them slipping up.
Yeah, that's a very interesting take. Again, I kind of lean on agreeing with you. I don't know necessarily about the three losses. I'm not sure yet. I'd have to kind of do my own research onto their schedule and kind of just have my own personal feel. But I definitely will agree that I think we'll see regression, especially at quarterback, because while you said he was serviceable, Riley Leonard was a big piece of why they were able to win a lot of their close games. There were so many games that could have been a lot closer if Riley Leonard didn't go crazy last season. And so I agree. I think this season, the most pressure is probably on Marcus Freeman. Not that he'll lose his job, because obviously he won't, even if they struggle. But I mean it in the sense of you kind of knew what you had with Notre Dame last year. They had a very solid defense and an above average offense that was able to rise to the occasion in all of their big games last season, barring their overlooking of NIU. And so I think the pressure is on Marcus Freeman to kind of recreate that magic with a lesser team. And I just don't see it. Like you said, Miami and then Texas A&M back-to-back weeks for a true freshman is going to be difficult. And I just think that maybe they buy into their own hype a little bit from what they were able to do last season early in this season, and they're going to struggle. And then it's the biggest thing that every football coach ever tells you is how do you bounce back from adversity? And we'll have to see if they lose one of the two or both of those early games against Miami and A&M, how are they going to be able to handle that loss and move forward in the rest of their very interesting season? That's what we'll have to see. And so, like I said, I think a lot of the pressure falls on Marcus Freeman, because you can look at this roster and go, okay, 8-4, 9-3, that sounds realistic, but how so that we can make the playoffs? How do we get to 11-1 or 10-2? It's all going to fall on the coaching schemes to me.
Yeah, and like you said, like that loss to NIU galvanized the team. That lit a fire under their butts, and they were able to go through the rest of the season and really have a not a miracle run. I don't want to say that, but like close to it. Like no one expected Notre Dame to make the national title, and I do wonder if there's going to be a bit of a hangover for them just because it was a close game. A couple of plays go the other way, you're national champs. Plus, you lose a lot. You do return some, but Riley Leonard was that kind of X factor for them, and can Carr do that, or Angeli even if he gets in? So we'll see with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Yeah, definitely going to be an interesting team to keep our eyes on going forward throughout the season. All right, moving on. My fourth take. I am back into the Big Ten. And this is one we discussed a little bit off camera, which is going to be interesting. So I'll keep it kind of nice and short. I think that Illinois is a quiet contender to make an at-large bid this year. And I say that because they're returning a lot of players on both sides of the ball. Altemeyer's coming back at quarterback, and I believe it's nine total returning offensive starters,
Yes.
as well as six returning defensive starters. And this was a team that was pretty solid last year. It was like 8 or 9 wins out of Illinois last year. They go and they beat South Carolina in their bowl game, which obviously that was a great game. There was a lot of controversy. The coaches were beefing. That was a fun game, but a lot of good returners. And you look again, like I said, with the Big Ten, it's not the toughest schedule. Their out of conference games are pretty easy. And their first conference opponent's Indiana, which we'll have to wait and see what kind of Indiana program shows up. I have no idea what Indiana is going to look like this year. I have no take for them. So could be a win, but their toughest game of their season is going to be Ohio State. But that's like they don't play Oregon, they don't play Penn State. I
They
might
don't
be
play
wrong, but I don't
Michigan
even think
either.
they play Michigan.
Yeah.
And so you look at it, and yes, Ohio State's going to be tough. That might be a game they lose. But if they can win the rest of their Big Ten schedule, which they very well could, like I said, Indiana, we don't know. I know they play Northwestern, which, let's be real, Northwestern is not a good program. They play Purdue. Like they have a lot of the bottom feeder teams in the Big Ten. And so I look at it, I think that Illinois this year is going to be the Indiana of last year, where they won't make the Big Ten title game, but they'll lose only one game in conference and one game overall. And then we're playing that sitting game of is the committee going to favor that? And so I don't know. This year, we're seeing how Indiana performed in the playoffs last season, but I think that out of any team that's kind of borderline, especially in the Big Ten, I think Illinois will be the sneaky contender to make it into the playoffs out of there.
Yeah, and I agree. I wrote it down as well. We didn't show each other until we got on here before we started recording. So, yeah, I think Illinois makes the playoff. I'm going to say it outright. And I think it's Indiana all over again. They lucked out in the Big Ten. You said their non-conference games are pretty easy. The hardest one's at Duke. We don't know what Duke looks like at all. They play Ohio State early-ish in the season at home, at Wisconsin, but we don't know what Wisconsin looks like. They were awful for parts of last year. And then at Indiana, of course, is their first conference game. That'll be interesting. But like you said, don't know what that looks like either. I have a lot of confidence in Luke Altmaier. He's betting on himself, coming back for another year, trying to get his draft stock up or possibly get into that upper echelon of quarterbacks. And they're returning a lot. Brett Bielema, he sounds confident in the press conferences for the Big Ten media days. So I like this team. I think it's eerily familiar to Indiana with Kirk Cignetti. And there's definitely a way which, as Andrew said, they don't make the Big Ten title because of that loss to Ohio State, and they luck out because they're 11-1. The committee is not going to let out a team that went 11-1 in a Power Four conference, especially the Big Ten and SEC. I think they sneak in. Maybe they go on the road. I'm not saying they do anything in the playoffs, but I really think they'll get there. So yeah, right on the nose, right with you.
Yeah, it's gonna be it's going to be interesting to see, but like I said, that's a team that I kind of sneaky like this year, and we'll just kind of have to wait and see. But like you said, Bielma, he's got it going. They got a lot of returners. That's a team that should easily be on everybody's radar. I think I'm early buying into the hype, but we'll wait and see. I mean, they could lose to Indiana and just fall apart. We'll never.
Yeah, yeah, who knows?
Yeah. All right. Do you want me to just to move into my last take since that was one of ones that we both had together?
Yeah, yeah,
All right.
sure.
All right, cool. All right, so moving on, I'll give my fifth and final take, and then Tyler will go and give his after. But my final take of the season, I was kind of stuck for a while. Took me about an hour to kind of figure out what I wanted to do. But I'm picking a specific game that I think will be the game of the year for the regular season. And I'm going to the final week of the season, the true rivalry week. I'm going Clemson versus South Carolina back to the ACC and the SEC teams I've talked about. I think that that will be the absolute game of the year. We watched it last year, and it was a great game. Came down to the last second. Lenora Seller scrambling and gets that touchdown off. Phenomenal game. And I think we are going to get even more fireworks this year. Last year, again, it was along similar lines. South Carolina could have potentially been a win and in.
Yeah.
Clemson, realistically, the game didn't matter because they had to win the ACC anyway to get in, which they ended up doing. I think we're going to get a similar kind of storyline. I think South Carolina will have one less loss and be truly into a we need to win and we will be in whether or not we make the SEC as an at large because I think the SEC is going to be chaotic. So I don't think they'll outright win the SEC, but I think they'll have that as a this is our need to win for the resume playing to me either a one loss or an undefeated Clemson at that point. And I just expect fireworks. My two probably front runners for the Heisman and Lenora Sellers and Cade Klubnik. I think both of them are just going to have a field day. I think it's going to be balls to the wall. I think we could get a very high scoring game. And who doesn't love a rivalry game? Two teams
Yeah.
from South Carolina that hate each other. One's playing for potential playoff hopes. The other is playing just to have momentum for the ACC title game. I expect fireworks. I expect it to be high scoring. Hell, I expect some fights. I think it's going to go down. We're going to look back once we're here in the off season next year, going, God, what a game Clemson, South Carolina was. And so that's my hot take out of every game this season. There's a lot of great. I could even say Ohio State, Texas, week one. Some of the big conference games in the Big Ten or the SEC. But no, I think this non-conference matchup between rivals and Clemson, South Carolina will be the best of the year.
Yeah, that was definitely my best reaction to a game. I posted that video on TikTok. I was out looking at Christmas trees and I had a big bet on South Carolina and they won in that fashion. I think it was 21-16 was the score or something like that. And then Clemson actually got the ball back and like turned it over through a pick or something. And it was just insane. And I agree with you. It's only going to get bigger. Like now these two teams are expected to be in the top 10. And if this is a top 10 matchup, the last week of the year, bragging rights for the state. And I do agree, like South Carolina may not be in the SEC title game, but they're going to need this win. And you best believe Coach Beamer is going to get them ready for this game, especially after how the committee kind of left them out after winning this game last year. And then for Clemson, bad taste in your mouth. I know you still made the playoff, you still won the ACC, but you never want to lose to a rival. And so Dabo Sweeney's going to have them ready as well to try to get a bye, I would say, or get into the ACC title game undefeated and make it in and make it guaranteed that they're in either way. So it's going to be a blast. Yeah, I think game of the year it fits at least for now. I'm sure there's going to be some crazy games throughout, and of course you make us wait until the last week of the year for the rivalry games. But that's how I love it. That's one of the great things about college football. So it's going to be fun. Definitely a lot of fireworks.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
so excited for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know it's July, but I'm ready. I'm ready. Let's go. Let's get the leaves turning orange. Let's go.
Yep, mentally I'm in November already.
Yeah, I'm done with the heat. Let's get into it. All right. So staying in the ACC, my final take is that Georgia Tech makes the ACC championship game. I don't think they necessarily win it. I'm with Andrew. I think Clemson's the team that they play in that game. But besides Clemson, I'm not sold on a single other ACC team. I think for the most part, besides Clemson, it's wide open. It's the Wild West. It's similar to the Big 12. Who is going to play Clemson in the ACC title game? With what I like to call Haynes and Haynes, the law firm, Haynes King returning at quarterback and Jamal Haynes in the backfield reminds me of Jahmyr Gibbs. The shiftiness, it's going to be really good. He's just so explosive, probably a top five back in the country. And then Haynes King, pretty good, had his moments where he was bad, but if he can be consistently above average, they could scare a lot of teams. Like they took Georgia to what, six overtimes or nine overtimes or whatever
Fine.
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, nine overtimes. Probably should have won that game. Um, I they're returning most of those guys. So there's no reason why they can't do the same thing again, except with a better record. Obviously, started off the season in Dublin, beat Florida State, and we were all like, what's going on here? Is Georgia Tech legit? Kind of fell back, but had a very solid season. They play at Colorado week one. That'll be a really interesting matchup, but Colorado does not have the same hype. And personally, I'm not sold on them. I think that most of their talent was in Shadur and Travis Hunter. No offense to Colorado there, but offense kind of. But we'll see if Deion Sanders, if the recruits that he got in the transfer portal, Caden Salter, will work out for them. But that's the biggest hump out of conference. besides Georgia at the end of the year, obviously, but that won't matter if they're already in the ACC title game. They also play Clemson at home, which is a huge thing. They don't play Miami, and they host a lot of the harder teams. So they go on the road to Wake Forest, Boston College, and Duke, but they host Pitt, Virginia Tech, and Syracuse. I think there's a really good chance that they have one loss in the ACC heading into it, and just every other team has two. That's pretty simple to me, besides Clemson, who I think goes undefeated. Now, Georgia Tech could scare them, but I'm not going to guarantee that. But I do think they make the ACC title game and could be one of those bid stealers that we have no idea that they were coming, and they end up being in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting to watch. Like, I agree. I like Jamal Haynes and Haynes King coming back. And like you said, they gave a lot of team scares. They beat Miami last year, too.
Yeah, they
So
did.
they were kind of that upset team throughout last season and returning a lot of guys. I think Brent Key's got a lot of interesting pieces to play with again this year. They've been on an upwards trajectory since he's taken over the program. And yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Obviously, I'm big on the Clemson this year. But that game's going to be interesting at Georgia Tech. Clemson had a really bad run game last year, and that triple option is what Georgia Tech thrives on. So that could be a really interesting game. And like you said, the fact that they're hosting, Pitt, Virginia Tech, and Syracuse is going to play in their favor. And they could potentially be almost that Syracuse of last year, except obviously you have them making the title game over Syracuse, who didn't make it
Yeah.
last season. But that team that was kind of unexpected, had some guys coming in that we knew about, but we weren't sure necessarily how they were going to pan out, and they were wildly successful. I like that. I would love to watch that happen. I disagree. I think unfortunately teams will continue to figure that triple option out. They'll find a way to stop it, but I think it's a very fun hot take to watch, and I'm excited to watch more Georgia Tech this year because I do love to watch a triple option do its thing, especially when it's successful. So we'll wait and see. And like I said, for all the money I have into Clemson stocks, I kind of hope that's not the upset that they get this year, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, well, hopefully it's week one. In my mind, that's the game that Clemson's got to lose. So we'll see about that. But ACC, like I said, wide open. Anyone's game. I like the Yellow Jackets to take that spot there. With that being said, anything else to add? I mean, we're back. We're back, everyone. We're back. We're going to be recording each week. We'll be active on TikTok again, gearing up for the season. Super excited, ready to go. Make some good content for you guys. Thank you guys all for watching. Remember to subscribe Sideline Signal on YouTube and follow us on TikTok. And please, in the comments, let us know some of your hot takes and we'll respond to them. Of course, very active in the comments. So, with that being said, thank you, Andrew, for coming on. I am Tyler. Let's go. 2025 college football is almost here. Thank you guys for watching.